Welcome back to the Automation Podcast. My name is Shawn from Insights in Automation. And this week on the show, I meet up with Shannon Friedman and Doug Campbell to learn all about Octoplant from Auvesy-MDT. Now, before we get to that, I do want to thank our sponsor, theautomationschool.com. They actually paid for or underwrote the cost of producing this episode. And you can see here all of this ControlLogix hardware on the table that belongs to the Automation School. This is here just to remind you that we are currently filming our new course, Ultimate ControlLogix. And the Ultimate ControlLogix course is a forever course. We plan to keep adding to it and updating it every time we get a new piece of hardware. But for now, it's in early access. And when you pick it up today for a limited time, you also get 2 other courses for free. You get our existing ControlLogix Level 1 and 2 course, PAC Basics Extended, and you also get our Logix Live course, which is a replay of a live course I taught a couple years ago. So you're getting 3 courses for the price of 1 when you pick up Ultimate ControlLogix. And with that said, let's go ahead and jump into our show and learn all about Octoplant. Shannon and Doug, thank you for coming on the Automation Podcast. I'm excited to learn all about your latest product. We've had you on in the past, not you two gentlemen personally, but we've had the company on in the past to talk about some of the older products. And so I'm really excited to talk about your latest current gen product and what it can do. But before we get into all of that, I was hoping you guys could introduce yourselves to the audience, tell us a little bit about yourselves. And I think we'll start with Shannon. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience all about yourself?
Well, thank you, Shawn. Really appreciate you having us today. So, yeah, I'm Shannon Friedman, sales engineer here at Auvesy-MDT. I've got a lot of background in industrial automation. I'm studied electrical engineering, went through an apprenticeship, worked at field service, and made my way to sales engineering at some point. So I have a bunch of domain experience with controllers, and I know what's going on in and around automation, Industry 4.0, and so forth. So yeah, thank you for having us today. Over to you, Doug.
Well, I'm Doug Campbell. I'm also a sales engineer with Auvesy-MDT. I've been with the company for about 5 years now. And before that, I was an electrical contractor, electrical engineering contractor. I worked mostly for automation facilities, automotive, corrugators, stuff like that. So I also have a lot of time spent in automation. Shannon?
I'll just kick it off a little bit, set the stage here. So we are obviously MDT. There's been a lot going on over the last 1 or 2 years, actually. So, Shawn, you already brought it up that you've spoken with our counterparts from a previous live, I guess you could say. Back in the autosave days, MDT software was here to speak about what they do and how they do it, but there's been a lot of change happening. So obviously, is the German company, or was the German company. They had a product called Version Dog, and now there was MDT software here in the US with their autosave product. And as things came along, they were both purchased, they were merged together, and we've taken the best of autosave and the best of Version Dog, and we brought it into Octoplant. So essentially, Octoplant is now the new emergence of autosave and Version Dog, what used to be just Auvesy and what used to be just MDT software, and now we're on the market as Auvesy-MDT, just to set the stage a little bit. So what we have here is Octoplant, of course, our core product. It's an all-covering data management platform. It's all about change management, version control, automating backups. Essentially, it's a solution to help you understand where your backups are in a centralized location, automate backups for OT equipment, any industrial controller, for example, and really help you understand changes where they're happening. So that's really it in a nutshell. We have 8 arms of functionality, and I'll just let Doug speak to a couple of them.
Right. So our primary focus is, of course, disaster recovery, which is our ability to not prevent you from ever experiencing a disaster, but enabling you to get back into operation as quickly and efficiently as possible. We also focus very heavily on threat protection, so helping to inform you about any firmware or hardware vulnerabilities you may have in your facility. And we also have an ongoing internal project to provide more online education and training to our customers to allow you to learn about the product yourself without having to schedule time with our team and invest. So we're trying to build up that platform very much.
Hey everybody, just a quick message from our sponsor, theautomationschool.com, who paid for the production of this episode. If you know anybody looking for PLC, HMI, or SCADA training, please tell them about theautomationschool.com. And with that, let's get back to the show.
Very good. A few things that automated version control and change management can help with are also things such as compliance management. So, in the food and beverage or pharmaceutical industry, for example, it's important to have logs of changes and programs and recipes. Anything that really goes into a container, essentially anything that's moved out to the customer, has to be tracked. This is especially important in the pharmaceutical industry where logs have to be held onto for 10 years. And we can help in creating those logs and audit reports automatically. We can assist you with business intelligence portions, so understanding what sort of interactions are actually taking place with controllers, where are changes being made, what's going on, what are the drivers for those changes, and are those changes being documented. So we all know there's uncontrollable forces on shop floors. I used to be a field service engineer myself, so I probably was one of the worst offenders in making changes on PLCs undocumented. Other than that, a few things to highlight here is that we have a wide range of different customers and a whole list of different verticals. So a lot of automotive in here, food and beverage, automotive suppliers. We have pharmaceuticals. Really a lot going on here. Some of them are well known. Others are maybe not as well known. But we have CERN right down here, for example. They're running the biggest machine that humankind has ever built, and they are using our systems to back it all up.
For the audio only audience who can't see, you got a lot of car companies in here, you got a lot of consumer good companies, so a lot of names that you would be very familiar with, and I won't go through them all, but you think of automobiles or think of consumer goods, you can probably guess some of the names on the slide. Now, I was wondering, Shannon, if you could go back the slide for a minute, because I want to ask you. So I think, we had we had a previous podcast with AutoSave on it. We've had similar type of companies come on and talk about their products, and I think from that we got an understanding that your package can sit on a OT network, can connect to a sundry of probably every major PLC out there, right? And
Yeah.
take the program and back it up automatically, and then create us a comparison report saying, hey, this is what changed. And I think that functionality is well set in our audience's mind. But what would you say are some of the things that maybe an autosave user wouldn't automatically think of when they think of Octoplant? Like what are a couple of the maybe two or three bullets? And Doug, chime in here if you want to. And there are things that this new package does, this new latest and greatest stuff from Auvesy-MDT. What does it do? What are some of the things it can do that maybe autosave or version dog couldn't?
Now that's really a great question. And with that, I mean, first and foremost, there is the business intelligence side to things now. So we're with our most current business intelligence tool, the the Octoplant Pro Hub, as we call it. We have a Power BI driven user interface for end users to really understand what's going on, show interesting charts and graphics. You can drill down to the data, create value from it, understand what's going on, counterlink it to your own data. So if you do have interesting data coming from another system already, you can link it to your version change management. You could link it with energy data, for example, understand which version uses how much energy on which line. Just some ideas there. But of course, the threat protection portion also takes a way larger role in Octoplan, and I'll let Doug speak a little more to that one.
Thank you. So what Octoplant does that neither autosave nor our other legacy product, Version Dog, could do is we take information, like I mentioned, about your firmware and hardware and other details about your devices, and we ping that against the CVE database, which is Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. It's maintained by an arm of Homeland Security, and there are also databases by the manufacturers themselves. So we ping your info against their databases, and then we generate a report to let you know if you have devices on the floor that are outdated or that have a known exploit. And then most importantly, we give you a solution. So if a human were to do that, that would be somebody's full-time job to comb through all of those details manually.
That's really good because that CVE database is huge. I've gone in there a few times and I've left with my eyes glossed over and wanting to get back to my own world. But so that's really good. On the business intelligence side, does it actually collect data or does it just look at other databases?
So the business intelligence piece is our hub, and it is pulling information out of an Octoplant server or servers,
Okay.
because one hub can monitor multiple servers.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you, guys. Let me turn it back to you. I appreciate you answering those questions.
Very good. Thank you, Shawn. At this point, I almost think we're done with the PowerPoint portion.
I think that's a good intro. So today we're going to look at 3 modules in Octoplant. This is the first one. This is our user client, which is where the majority of your people are going to spend the majority of their time. This is where you actually create your revisions, look at your comparisons, generate your reports, and you can even trigger your upload jobs from here. We have our tool ribbon at the top, of course, and our workflow is actually laid out for us in the ribbon. So we check it out, we grab a copy from the server and write it into our local archive. This is mine. Our next step is to open it with the editor. So this will read the file extension and then open whatever program you have assigned in the Windows registry. So for example, an ACD file will be opened by Studio 5000, a .s7p will be opened by Siemens Symantec. Once you've made your changes, you can then create a new version, apply your comments and review. Finally, you will commit that version from your local archive back into the server. Here we have our working directory, which is really just my local archive, and this right-hand menu is contextual. So once I pick a specific device, now I'm looking at each revision that I've ever had of this particular project. I can see when it was created, by whom, and some comments. So here we used a change request system. And down here at the bottom, we have a comparison summary, which allows us to see the pathway within the project to where the change was made and the nature of that change. So both of these are just rung differences. Here we have an example where we caught some tag values, but that's just a summary. So a more detailed comparison will show us not only where in the project those changes were located, but the nature of those changes. So we have a nice clean graphical comparison. And we can also demonstrate rung changes. Side by side, highlighted in red, very easy to see what's going on. And I would also point out that this comment is not an Octoplant comment. That is a Studio 5000 comment. So if someone had made a change to this in the ACD file, we would have found that as well and highlighted it. You can also export this as a PDF with ease. So if you need to report on something to get approval before you commit a change, or if you found something unexpected on a device.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to break in here with a short word from our sponsor, theautomationschool.com. We are currently filming our Ultimate Edition courses. These are forever courses, which we are designing to be modular and to be upgradable with no time limit. So as we get new hardware comes out, we can just keep adding more and more lessons. And you can see on the workbench here, I have all the control logics items. That's because I'll be taking pictures for the presentation we do inside many of the lessons that we cover the hardware. One of the things we do at the Automation School is we like to cover all of the hardware, as much of it as we can, because we know you in the field don't get a chance to take stuff out of the rack many times, you know, and you can't shut down the system to look at stuff. So we want to make it very clear where the switches are, where the thumb wheels are, where all the ports are, where the MAC addresses are, and so on. So if you know anybody who needs PLC, HMI, or SCADA training, please mention our sponsor, theautomationschool.com, to them. And with that, let's get back to the show. For the audio audience, I know you're not seeing this demo, so I'm just going to describe it. So the software, the ribbon mod, looks a lot like Microsoft Office. Very easy to read and understand. On the left-hand side, we have a project tree, which is a ton of folders. And I see company names and I see technology names there, and it looks like every PLC known to man has its own folder. And so, like, there's a Rockwell folder with RS Logics in it. There's a FactoryTalk View folder, and just pretty much every vendor we cover on our shows is here. You get Siemens with TIA Portal. So this is, I think, showing that Octoplant takes that wide range support from the previous packages and brings it forward, which is nice. But then when you clicked on one of those, we got a window in the middle that showed, like, almost like a spreadsheet format, we're showing all the different versions. And when you select any of those versions at the bottom, this bottom window, it's showing a summary of the changes. And I think that's so cool because it's good to have. A lot of times you'll just see, all right, there was 3 changes, but made in this one, but you really can't see it until you do the full report. But here, as you're choosing the different versions, version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's giving us a little, like a little spreadsheet at the bottom of, with a summary of the changes, like, this rung was changed in this program and this routine, which I think is so cool. But now to compare, when you wanted to compare, I was so impressed with the way the comparison looked. It was so clean and professional. So could you just walk us through audibly how you did the compare? So we're looking at the 5 different revs for the Cyrus Logix 5000 project. How did you go about comparing two different versions?
Sure. So a right click brings up our menu,
Yep.
and you can compare with the immediate previous version,
Okay. Yep.
or you can set partner.
Okay. Yes.
So I set number 5, and then I go back to number 2 and compare with my partner.
Yep.
And now I'm looking at everything that changed between 2 and 5.
This is a summary of the values of, this is the difference report, right?
Yep.
And that was the parameters and local tags. And now we're looking at, this is routine 02. And
Correct.
it just looks so professional and clean. I mean, it doesn't look identical to Studio 5000. It couldn't. You're using your own engine, but it does look very, very clean and sharp, and I like that. Now, can you choose maybe the someplace where there's a difference so we can see, like, how that's highlighted?
Sure. So all of the ones that we're looking at have differences.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yep. Rung 0 different, not zero differences. I see. Okay. So on this one, we're seeing that the source was changed from a tag to a constant, or from a constant to a tag. Yeah, from a constant to a tag. So it's just a move instruction. And so the source was changed. Go ahead, choose another one. So in this one, we have a JSR, and the actual routine we're jumping to changed. So very easy to see the change. And I'm just learning this, I'm seeing it for the first time. Is the change in red?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can you choose another one so we can see what that looks like?
Sure. So this one is I think my best example.
Okay. So everything in red is changed.
Right. So our first normally open changed from auto enable to cycles per second, and etc.
Okay, great. So we're seeing 2 rungs side by side with it has a couple of branches in it. There's probably, I don't know, 10 instructions in there. And but the things that have changed are highlighted in red. They really pop out. And yeah, that's so intuitive and easy to understand and clean. It's a very clean, modern look. So I'm sorry for taking you through that again. I just really wanted to absorb what I was seeing here, maybe describe it a little bit for the audio audience. So I appreciate that, Doug. And I'll turn it back to you because what were you going to do next? You were actually going to check something out?
I was going to create a new version.
Okay, awesome. Go ahead. Back to you.
All right. So we'll follow our workflow from the ribbon. So we check it out. I'm going to put a lock on it so you can see what that looks like. And now I've got some quick visual indicators that I have a local copy. First off, this is the only line item that's in color.
Okay.
The others that are in gray doesn't mean I don't have permission to work on them. It just means I haven't checked them out.
Okay.
I can also see here local version is 5. equal to server version is 5.
Uh-huh.
And there's my lock. So anyone who looked at this component would see that I've claimed ownership of it, and they would not be able to create a new version and check it in until either I take my lock off or if I go on vacation and admin takes it off for me. So my next step would typically be to open it with editor. I'm going to do this without any editors today. So we're just looking at Octoplant native capabilities. So we will restore to an older version. We're going to go back to version 2. So we copy the version to our working directory. I'm warned that I'm about to delete the contents of that target. That's okay. Now I have my pencil icon, which indicates that I've made a change since I checked this out. I also have a note here with a timestamp. And now I simply create new version. So this brings up the same comparison screen that we just looked at with the addition of my comment fields. So you can name the entire version, for example. And these 2 fields here are comments for the entire version. It's like what we looked at a few moments ago when we saw the change request number and the description of the nature of work.
So yeah, in the change requests or in the changes field, if somebody is using a CMMS system, for example, and there's a ticket for a maintenance thing, they could just add the ticket number into there manually, and then everybody could always come back and see what maintenance interaction was this in the CMMS.
Now, this may be off topic, but can you require them to add comments and change changes?
Yes.
Okay.
And these bottom 2 fields are specific to this change. So why did I do what I did on this rung? Perhaps here I added a light curtain, for example. And you could do that for each individual change, whatever the nature of the work may have been. And then once you've commented to your satisfaction, you simply create the version and check it in. We'll see version 6 appear at the top, our timestamp, my default name, my comments, and then down here, my change specific comments.
Yeah, that's so intuitive. I love the summary screen at the bottom, not having to go through the whole repair, the whole compare tool.
It is useful as just an at a glance source of info. And we can do more than just PLCs and robots. We can also work with PDFs and Word documents. So often people will want to include alongside a PLC, let's say the floor plan or the mechanical diagrams or electrical drawings.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and plug that into Octoplant as well. So here's an electrical diagram that changed.
And we're actually seeing red on the electrical diagram, the before and after.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is really helpful for troubleshooting as a maintainer as well. So if I were an electrician and there is an issue in the cabinet, odds are that issue has come up somewhere where people have worked before. Because normally, once a wire is tightened down, the connector doesn't just loosen up unless there's weird vibrations or anything going on. But of course, as soon as humans come back into play and loosen wires, tighten them back up, change connections, that's when errors happen. And now having this comparison, seeing where changes have been made, where things have changed, what's been going on, that can really help you in your troubleshooting efforts.
Just knowing where the diagram is a tremendous help.
Oh, yeah.
Or the backup for that matter, because it's not on a thumb drive in somebody's drawer.
So that's the core of the user client. There are some other features and functions, but that's the heart of it. So do you have any questions before we move on, Shawn, or do you want to talk about upload jobs next?
No, yeah, keep on going. I'm good.
All right. So just to clarify our terminology, when I say a job, what I mean is an automated task where the Octoplant server reaches out to a target device, whether that's a PLC, a robot, a camera, a network switch, whatever it may be. We pull the logic from that device and we compare it with what's on the server, as well as with whatever we saw there yesterday. And setting these jobs up, if you're familiar with autosave, this ought to be a pleasant surprise. It is much simpler than it was with the legacy product. So once you've chosen your target, you simply assign a schedule. The one that I've seen the most often is every 8 to 12 hours, so at the end of every shift. That way, if we do find an unexpected change, we have a pretty good idea about who was on duty at that time. But you could do it more seldom if you please, weekly, monthly, or once a day. You can decide how to behave in case of an error. So do you want to try again? How many times and how long should you wait? And we can notify individuals. So these are just individuals who are already in our Octoplant user management database. So let's say I need to let this particular supervisor know, and I would also like to inform my maintenance department. But I'm not limited to that. You can plug any valid email address in here. So maintenance@yourcompany.com, and it will just go ahead and go out to that pre-built email group. Then the last thing that you have to do is give us a pathway.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to break in here really quick to let you know I have another show that I'm filming each week. It's called the Automation Morning Show. And in it, I cover news from over 200 different vendors in the industrial automation space. And you can find links to every show and every article I've covered in over 150 episodes over at automate.news. There's no www, there's no .com. It's just automate.news. And the audio edition is available everywhere that you'll find the Automation Podcast. Just search for Automation Morning Show. And with that, let's get back to this show.
So in this case, if you have RS Links installed, you can simply click Browse. It'll open up the same interface that you're already familiar with. Or if you don't, then you can copy and paste a pathway from Factory Taught Links or wherever you can find it. And now you're done. Simply save it and walk away. And this will run on its schedule in perpetuity.
Now to do the upload, right, there you have to put a license of, for in this case, Studio 5000 somewhere, don't you, on one of your agents?
That's true. Yep, we would need RS Links in Studio 5000.
Yep. And that is, you guys use do you still use an agent model where you have, I mean, everything could be on one computer or you could be distributed throughout the plant with different, am I using the right terminology, agents?
Yes. So
Okay.
we still have agents. Autosave actually has those agents as well, version
Okay.
dog 2. And those agents essentially are Windows services that run in the background on like a workstation computer, for example, or just tucked away on an IPC. And they do the footwork. They connect to the actual devices, they run the backups, they run the comparisons, and then they send those reports back up to the server. And you did bring up a good point that we do need a license of RS Logix 5000, but it really depends. So we integrate with certain devices better than with others. So with a Siemens Step 7, for example, we don't need any editors. We can just natively connect to the
Oh.
device, run the comparison, and then send that comparison report back up to home.
That's a big price savings. Well, it's a price savings, so you don't have to actually have a license of S7. You know how to, of Step 7, you know how to upload from S7 PLCs and do the compare without it. Okay, but with Rockwell, and I think all other packages on the market require the same thing. It's just you're using the software that it was designed to upload from the controller to do the upload from the controller. And that's, I think that's what everybody else on the market does as well. It's just a given. Back to you, Doug.
So I just wanted to very briefly touch on our user management and how we do that. So you can control, of course, who has access to what. So our administrators can do everything, of course. And then our maintenance group is more restricted. So we have 4 levels of rights, which are to read, to edit, to create, and to delete. And you can get very granular with these. So our maintenance group as a whole here can only read. But if I have an individual like Mr. Meyer, who I trust a little bit more, I can give him permission to edit certain things. So perhaps he's a robot expert, and I want him to be able to create new versions of all of those projects. So again, who can see and who can do what with specific projects can get very, very again, granular. And also, you don't have to build this manually. So we can sync with an Active Directory. You can import your
Nice.
users with just a little bit of information from your IT group.
Yeah, I'm seeing all users here, and then I'm seeing the groups, administrators, maintenance, we could have engineering. That's great. And we can assign these for each of these categories, we can assign it either for everything or on a per project or per folder basis. So I may want, maintenance in building one only to have access to programs in building one. I may not want them to have access to programs in building two. And so we can do that here with based on this folder structure and nested folders as well. So very interesting.
Much easier than having to build the entire thing out manually each and every time.
Yeah.
And then the last bit I would like to show you, actually, I would like to pass it to Shannon for this last bit.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Doug. I really appreciate it. Now, the last part I have to show here is the Octoplant Pro Hub. So I was talking about our business intelligence portion a little bit earlier, and essentially what the Pro Hub is, it's a web interface for you to really leverage whatever data accumulates during our comparisons, change management, and version control. So there's a bunch of dashboards in here, a lot of information we can actually drill down into, and it's meant to be sort of a single pane of glass for all operations from the shop floor. So, like Doug said earlier, the Pro Hub can actually connect to multiple servers. So this one instance actually is good for multiple servers. So at the top of the screen, there's a little list that says um, assembly in Germany, assembly in the US, packaging in Mexico. So there's 3 different servers. And if we just want to look at the information from Central and North America, all I need to do is click the little X icon by assembly Germany, and it'll actually update the charts right away. And we can see how things have been performing. So what we're looking at here is a ring chart, and it's about 60% green. And those are the jobs that we're running, those automated backups and comparisons. So 60% green means 60% are equal, and that's good news. That's what we want to see because of course it means that the devices in production are running what we think they're running. Moving forward, there's another color in here which is blue, and those are labeled different. So there's 8% or 6 devices net in this example that are actually different. And a good way we can utilize this information now is we can simply right click that. One right click is enough. I just did a double right click. We can hit the drill details. So once we do that, it'll actually pull up a little table which gives us all the devices that are affected by differences. So we can see exactly where those devices are located, which server they're on. So we can see it's 4 here in the US, another 2 down in Mexico. We can see the component paths. So where are they located within our productions? The component types. So there's a Codesys PLC, 2 Rockwell Logics, a TIA portal from Siemens, and 2 KUKA robots that gave us difference reports on the jobs. And we can just scroll through here. There's a lot of information, so we can see when this job was last executed. It says on the 20th of September, and so that was yesterday, and it was run all between 6 and 7 p.m. at night. And now, just an example of what we can do with this list is we can simply export all that data, and we can say that we want to export the data as sort of an Excel sheet. So at the click of a mouse button, I can extract it as an Excel file, and then we can forward it to whoever this may concern. So be it a maintenance manager or head of production, anything like that. We just send them this document. They know which devices are currently running undocumented changes, and it's sort of a little to-do list from there. So really straightforward to work with that data. In general, there's a lot of dashboards. I'm just going to switch over to a dashboard labeled current component status. And in here, we can see sort of a general overview of how are things being worked with right now. So we can see how many components are currently locked. Essentially, that means how many are currently checked out, how many are actively being worked on. We can see there's a total of 20 or 6% of all of our projects and programs that Octoplant is managing. On the right-hand side, there's also sort of a bar chart where you can see how long those projects have been locked. So up here, there's one where we can see it's been 14 days or longer. and there's 10 projects. And again, we can just right click this, say we want to drill through this, and we'll get the full overview. We can see what all is going on. So right here at the very bottom, we have a user called Grant. He's the worst offender. He's been working on this for 21 days. So we might want to give him a phone call and ask him if he's really still working on his Artist Logics 5000 project, or if he forgot to check it back in and add it to version control. So good insights here. And of course, this also allows us to give Grant a call and see what changes is he making, what's the reason for such a large overhaul. So in general, this gives us a lot of contextual information.
I see the use for that in a plant,
Mhm.
but I also could see that could be useful for an engineering firm. Have engineering firms using this to kind of keep track of who's working on what projects?
There is some use cases or some engineering firms or OEMs that use this on a high level, especially for commissioning work or understanding how assets on a customer site have developed over time. So of course OEMs, once there was a site acceptance test, they want to understand what changes have been made whenever service interactions take place,
Sure.
or just for site acceptance itself. So I used to work for a larger OEM that builds custom machines, and site acceptance would be a process of about 2 weeks. So there
Mhm.
was a lot of changes being made, and I would have loved to have that option of doing version control, because all the changes were kind of like, oh, let's give this a try, let's try this and see where this goes. So there was a lot of time that went to those SATs, and I'm sure with actual version control, we could have probably cut that down by 3 or 4 days. So
Well, and two, a lot of time when you're doing that, you're doing it on the fly and you're not documenting any of it. So at the end of the thing, you're kind of
yeah,
like, well, I think this is what we changed, and I think this is why. Whereas if you were doing the checking it in every night and documenting
yeah,
each change that you kept, I could see that would be invaluable.
yeah, very much so, and especially because I'm sure plenty of us are offenders to that, is that we make changes more than one changes, because
Oh
changing
yeah.
multiple parameters when testing things is a great way to find the cause of the issue. So that doesn't always help, and of course with a system like this, it would be really nice to better understand that.
Mhm.
But another great use case we actually have here is the component types that are used mostly. So this is a little chart, but it actually exerts a lot of value. So in this demo environment, I think 50% of the round about 40% of devices are Ars Logics, another 40% are Siemens devices. But if we look at this, we can actually see type which device type is seeing the most interactions. So if we
Uh,
wanted to hire a new person, for example, a new electrician, a new technician, if 80% of our devices are RS Logics or Siemens, of course we would be looking for somebody that already knows Siemens or Rockwell. But in this chart, we can actually see that 37%, or over a third of all interactions with devices, are for KUKA robots. So even though our machine park is mostly made up of Siemens and Rockwell, in reality, we're mostly interacting with KUKA.
well, and that could be a
S-
training issue because maybe the guy doesn't know Kuka that well and he needs some training on it because he's really just poking and prodding and he doesn't really know what he's doing.
Very true. Very true. And this could also be a sign that if we hire somebody, we need somebody with KUKA
Yeah.
expertise just to work that out. So just this little chart has a lot of value in my opinion, because it can help us or help you understand what's actually being needed, what's actually being used. With that, let me hop to the last dashboard I want to show you today, and that is the asset management and asset inventory. So Octoplant is a central repository. We store all the PLC projects, and of course, part of those PLC projects is the hardware information. So we know which hardware is configured in it. We understand which controller is in there, what type of hardware is connected to it, and by running our jobs, we can actually give you a very up-to-date inventory of what is actually running. So in this screen, we have a breakdown. It's only Siemens and Rockwell in this example. We can see the vendors. We can see what type of devices it is. So is it PLCs or HMIs? But we also have a little bit of a table here that shows us where the devices are located again, and the names together with which model numbers exactly. So we have a Siemens PLC here. It's got an asset name. We have the model number, so it's a CPU 1500. We can see the order number for that one as well. And if we scroll through, we can even see the firmware, IP address, and MAC address. So a lot of information right here at a glance for us to work with. But it gets a little better because if we click this line item, the second table on the bottom half of the screen will actually update, and we can see exactly what type of devices are connected to it. So in this case, we have the actual PLC and a whole row of miscellaneous devices. So I will just grab a different one in here and see if I can find one that's a little more speaking. Right, here we go. So this one right here has a communications processor and a PLC. So we can actually see what's on the backboard bus of this device. We can see, again, the firmware versions for that where applicable, the order numbers, and the exact model number. So all that information can be gleaned into, and we're just utilizing the hardware project, where we're not going into your devices. We're not speaking to the field buses or anything. So we're not bringing any of that into jeopardy. We're really just utilizing the information that is stored in those projects. So another good example would be a Rockwell device here. So going through this, we can see there's the actual PLC, and then there's a bunch of remote I/O devices. And for all of them, we have the exact model number and the firmware version listed here because it's part of that project. And another good use case example here, just to speak to cybersecurity or lifecycle management, could also be that if we want to maybe stick to, let me just grab Siemens as a vendor, so we can filter the view. We could, for example, say that anything below firmware version 1.5 is no longer serviceable. We need to get rid of it. We have to replace it. So we just set this filter, and now we have this full list of devices that we can work with. And again, at the click of a button, we can export that data into an Excel sheet, for example, and then just have that sent out to whoever it may concern, so we can set up a project plan, how we're going to update these devices, how are we going to replace them if there's no way to update them, just to make sure that our production is safe. Doug, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, very briefly, I thought I would show the CVE report. So here we have a preview of the tool that I was mentioning earlier. So not only do we give you access to the same information that Shannon was just displaying, such as model number and firmware, we even have info about what's on each rack slot of this particular device. And the best bit is the CVE database comparison. So we give you an overall hygiene score, mostly based on your vulnerability, which is how difficult is that device to breach, and criticality, which is what can be done with said device once it has been breached. And then here we have a more expressive list. So this particular issue is found on S7 400 CPUs. You can tell what date it was published and last modified. And here, this will give you a link to a report that would look something like this. So this one actually came from Siemens, and it's an in-depth description of the known vulnerabilities in these two families of controllers. And as I mentioned, it's not just what hardware is affected, but most importantly, what you can do about it, because nothing ever goes up in these databases until we have a solution.
Very important.
So here you've got a link that will take you to Siemens. And after I click through a few things, allows me to directly download the patch that I need to resolve that issue.
Well, we should say, as far as automation and controls, nothing goes up there that there isn't a fix for. There are other products where the vulnerabilities are listed and they don't list the fix, which I think is criminal, but you can find that yourself in the CVE database if you're interested in what I'm referring to. And these things take intelligence to look at. Anybody who's looked at these knows this. I had a customer back in the day who was panicking because they had an Ethernet card that was showing up in this list. And the vulnerability was that you wouldn't be able to use the Ethernet card's internal web page, which nobody uses, if somebody commissioned a DDoS attack against the card which if you have somebody in your plant who's sending millions of packets to your Ethernet card so that you can't use the web page on the Ethernet card, which nobody uses, you have other bigger problems. Like they can just reach over and pull the controller out of the chassis. I mean, they can just go to the main disconnect and shut down your whole plant. So, these type of CVEs, they really do require, the people who write these, the people who document this, it's all just data, right? It takes you guys who are listening, the engineers and the technicians and electricians, to give it some context and some intelligence, put intelligence to it. So for those of you who have never looked at them before, I just wanted to tell that story because it does need you to be the intelligence behind the data that's in the report. And I'll leave it at that, and I'll throw it back to you, Doug.
Actually, I'm done. That's the end of my prepared presentation.
Oh, how about you, Shannon? Anything else you wanted to go through?
I think I have it all covered.
Well, guys, we covered a lot of stuff, and I am really impressed. This is the first time I'm seeing Octoplant. And now I'm sure there are going to be people out there that are like, okay, I just saw a lot of stuff, but like I need to get like more into what do I need for my application. So who would you tell our listeners, who are they going to contact if they want to find out more, maybe get a quotation, maybe understand the different modules and options?
I would suggest that first off, you can email either one of us and we'll get you to the right people. Or I would encourage you to visit our website, auvesy-mdt.com.
Okay, and for those who are listening, it's AUVESY-MDT. And we have them, we cover their product announcements in there pretty regularly on the show. So I'm thinking all of you guys have seen this name before. We actually covered the press release on the asset management portion. So this is the first time we're seeing it now. But yeah, very interesting stuff. So, guys, I really just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come on the show and give us this introduction to the product. Not only give us an introduction to the product, but also give us a demo and walk us through it. And thank you for also taking all my questions. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate your time. Thank you, Shawn.
Thank you, Shawn. I really appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I want to thank Shannon and Doug for coming on the show and bringing us up to speed on Octoplant. Now, if you did enjoy this episode and you'd like to see us keep producing more episodes of the Automation Podcast into 2024, then please give us a like, give us a share, give us a sub. That is the fuel that keeps this show coming back week after week. In addition to that, if you want to join our community, you'll find it over at automation.locals.com. And if you want to find our sponsor, where I teach courses on PLCs, HMIs, and SCADA packages, you'll find that site is theautomationschool.com. With that, I want to wish you all an awesome week. Stay courageous, stay fearless, and until next time, my friends, peace.